Rear choke. The rear choke is the single most reliable jiu-jitsu move in a real fight. Not because it looks flashy, but because it shuts things down without trading punches. When you are behind someone, you control the fight. They cannot see you, they cannot strike effectively, and they cannot build power. That position alone is already safer than almost anything else you can do. The reason the rear choke works so well is simple. It targets the blood flow to the brain, not the windpipe. You are not crushing the throat. You are squeezing the sides of the neck where the carotid arteries run. When those get compressed, the brain loses oxygen and the body shuts down. That is why it happens fast, sometimes in seconds. It is not about strength, it is about positioning and patience. A clean rear choke has a few key details. Your arm slides around the neck, your elbow lines under the chin, and your choking arm connects to your shoulder. Your other hand locks behind their head, not floating in space. Your chest stays tight to their back, and your hooks or seatbelt grip control their hips. When everything is connected, the other person has nowhere to go. Every attempt they make to pry your arms just makes the choke tighter. In a street context, the beauty of this move is control. You can scale it, you can hold someone, you can whisper commands, you can stop them from hurting someone, or you can apply more pressure if they refuse to calm down. Security workers, police grapplers, and bouncers use variations of this constantly because it neutralizes without striking. There is no brawl. There is no trading. There is just control. But it is not magic. There are risks if someone is heavier, if they slam themselves backward into a wall, or if there are multiple attackers. You never want to hang off someone's back while their friends circle. In those moments, the rear choke becomes less about putting someone to sleep and more about using it to steer off balance and escape. A quick squeeze, a stumble, a shove forward, and you are gone. The wrong way to think about the rear choke is as a finisher. The right way is to see it as a safety switch. It lets a smaller person control a larger one. It lets a calmer person stop a violent one. And it gives you the power to end a situation without destroying someone's face or your own hands. This move is the definition of why jiu-jitsu translates to the real world. Control first, safety first, and when needed, the ability to shut everything down fast. Back take. The back take is the doorway to control. If the rear choke is the power switch, getting to the back is how you reach it. In real fights, turning someone, slipping behind them, or letting them overcommit and exposing their back is one of the safest transitions you can make. When you're behind, their punches lose leverage, their kicks don't matter, and their only real option becomes panic. A back take usually happens in simple ways. Someone swings too hard and misses, you step off the line and wrap the waist. Someone tries to tackle you, you sprawl, circle, and land behind them. Someone grabs and shoves, you pivot, get an underhook, and slide around their hips. None of this looks cinematic. It looks like positioning, angles, and patience. Jiu-jitsu rewards people who don't rush. Once you're behind them, the goal isn't to immediately jump and hang off like a backpack. It's to lock the body first. Controlling the hips matters more than controlling the neck. A tight waist grip, a seatbelt, or simply pinning them with your chest against their shoulder makes them feel trapped. They twist, but they don't escape. They push, but they expose more. That frustration creates openings. In the street, the back take works because it removes chaos. You aren't trading wild punches. You aren't gambling in the pocket. You're moving the fight to a place where you can talk, restrain, or disengage. You can steer someone toward the ground. You can push them forward into space and run. You can calmly escalate only if you have to. The back take gives options, and in survival, options matter more than dominance. But it has rules. You don't want to stay glued to someone who's sprinting toward a curb, a wall, or a friend group. You don't want to chase the back when someone clearly has a weapon. You don't want to chase a choke on rough pavement if escape was already available. Real back takes are patient, not stubborn. Take the position, control the hips, and make the smarter decision, not the ego-driven one. The back take proves something simple. Position beats power, angle beats aggression, and the person who stays calm usually wins. Trip and control. Trips are the most underrated street-safe part of jiu-jitsu. They aren't slams, they aren't brutal throws, and they don't require crazy athleticism. A good trip uses balance, timing, and angles to make someone fall exactly where you want them to fall while you stay standing or land on top in control. In real fights, most people don't fall because they're hit hard. They fall because their weight shifts in the wrong direction. A simple step behind their heel, a little pull on the shoulder, or a twist at the hips and the ground does the rest. The opponent thinks they're moving forward and suddenly they're on their back wondering how it happened. Jiu-jitsu trips usually come from the clinch. You connect first, you grab an underhook, a collar tie, or a body lock, then you guide instead of forcing. When they push, you step aside and block their leg. When they pull, you follow and sweep the foot away. Done correctly, they drop gently but decisively, and you never lose balance. That's what makes tripping so powerful outside the gym. You're not brawling, you're redirecting. Instead of throwing punches and escalating, you're removing their base and ending their momentum without turning it into a war. Security, bouncers, and trained grapplers use trips constantly because they control the situation without making things worse. Once they're down, control matters more than damage. You don't chase punches, you settle your weight. Knee on belly, a quick pin across the hips, or sliding into mount gives you a stable position where you can talk, call for help, or leave if there's a window. If they scramble, the trip often lets you flow right into the back take or side control. But like everything, there are limits. Trips near curbs, stairs, or hard edges can get dangerous fast. If multiple people are nearby, staying attached on the ground is a bad plan. And if the person is wildly drunk, panicking, or swinging objects, tripping becomes about disengaging, not dominating. The safest trip is the one that creates space, not the one that keeps you tied up. The beauty of trips is that they don't rely on strength. They rely on timing, awareness, and staying calmer than the other person. They turn chaos into gravity doing the work for you. And in real life, that's usually all you need. Mount. Mount is one of the most powerful positions in jiu-jitsu, not because it looks dominant, but because it gives you control while giving the other person almost no good options. When you're mounted properly, your hips are heavy, your knees pinch into their body, and your hands are free while theirs are busy trying not to drown. In real life, that matters more than any fancy submission. The person underneath feels trapped, their breathing changes, panic sets in, and every bad decision they make just digs them deeper. Mount lets you choose what happens next instead of reacting to whatever they throw at you. The strength of mount comes from posture control. You aren't leaning forward trying to punch like in a movie. You're sitting upright, balancing your weight, and using your hands to post when they try to buck. Your hips ride their movement, not fight it. Every bridge they do burns energy. Every attempt to push you off exposes their arms, neck, or back. From mount, jiu-jitsu gives you options that fit real-world priorities. You can hold and talk if it's someone you don't want to hurt. You can control their wrists so they stop grabbing or striking. And if you absolutely have to, you can submit safely with chokes or shoulder locks. It's control without chaos, but mount has real risks if you treat it like a sport match. On pavement, your knees and ankles take damage. If there are friends nearby, you become a sitting target. And if the person underneath is bigger and explosive, staying mounted too long turns into a wrestling match you didn't need. Smart grapplers use mount to stabilize, assess, and either finish quickly or disengage. Another thing people misunderstand is strength. Mount isn't about squeezing or muscling someone. Small technical grapplers dominate big people from mount every day because the position is built around leverage. Keeping your hips low, feet hooked, and posture tall makes you feel twice your size without using twice the effort. Mount also exposes just how emotional real fights are. Once someone realizes they can't bench press you off, they panic. They give up their back. They turn recklessly. And that's usually when the fight ends, not because you hurt them, but because they mentally check out. Used correctly, mount isn't about beating someone up. It's about turning a dangerous situation into something predictable and safe. You're not winning with aggression. You're winning with control. Side control. Side control is where jiu-jitsu stops feeling like a fight and starts feeling like someone parked a car on your chest. It isn't flashy, it isn't dramatic, but when it's done right, the person underneath feels stuck in a way that makes panic set in immediately. The power of side control comes from angles. Instead of sitting on top of the stomach like in mount, you're across the torso. Your shoulder sinks into their jaw or chest, your hips are heavy across their ribs, and your arms control their head and far arm. Done correctly, they can't turn toward you, they can't turn away, and they can't sit up. They're stuck in the middle with no leverage. In real life, that's gold. Side control lets you shut chaos down. If someone is angry, thrashing, or trying to swing blindly, you can pin them without needing to strike. You're not chasing submissions. You're controlling breathing, posture, and movement. That alone calms fights more often than people realize. And unlike mount, side control is safer against big bursts of power. If they explode, you can float, adjust, switch sides, or transition to mount or knee on belly. You're always one step ahead instead of locked into a single position. Side control is also incredibly tiring for the person underneath. Their lungs are compressed, their neck is twisted slightly, and their core is constantly straining. Every escape attempt burns energy while the person on top just keeps getting heavier. Over time, panic turns into exhaustion, and exhaustion turns into quitting. But it's not invincible. On concrete, grinding someone's ribs isn't always a great plan. If weapons are involved, staying chest to chest can be dangerous. And if there are multiple attackers, you don't want to be glued to the floor longer than necessary. Street jiu-jitsu isn't about pinning forever. It's about using control to create exits. The best part about side control is how many roads it opens. You can slide into mount, you can take the back, you can isolate an arm, or you can stand up and leave safely while they're still trying to untangle themselves. It gives you options, and options are everything in survival. What makes side control work isn't strength, it's pressure. Small grapplers routinely shut down huge opponents here because they know how to use shoulder weight, hip, placement, and timing instead of brute force. And that's the real lesson. Control beats chaos. Side control doesn't look impressive to people who don't train, but anyone who's been pinned there knows exactly why it works. It removes choices, it slows everything down, it turns a wild fight into something predictable. Kimura Lock. The Kimura is one of those moves that looks like a submission, but in real life it's much more than that. It's a control system. Once you wrap it properly, you're not just attacking an arm, you're taking away a person's ability to fight with half their body. And when someone loses one arm, the rest of their game starts falling apart fast. The Kimura starts when you isolate the wrist and lock your own hands together around their elbow and shoulder. From there, you create a lever. Their arm becomes a handle that lets you move their whole upper body. You can turn them, roll them, pin them, drag them, and force them to move where you want. That's why police and security often use variations of this control without even calling it Kimura. It just works. In Jiu-Jitsu, the submission finishes by rotating the shoulder beyond its limit. On the street, that's exactly why you need discipline. The shoulder joint doesn't give warnings. Once it pops, it's permanent damage. So the real value isn't cranking it, the real value is using it like a steering wheel. You can pin someone face down, you can hold them from side control, you can move them away from a weapon or away from your friends. You get control without needing to throw punches. The Kimura is especially powerful when someone is turning their back or trying to stand up. Most untrained people push off the ground with their hands. When they do, their elbow floats up and the Kimura just falls into place. Once you clamp it down, they suddenly can't post, can't base, and can't explode anymore. Their strength disappears because the shoulder is locked out of position. But like everything, it has real-world limits. If you tunnel vision on the arm and forget situational awareness, you can get blindsided. If there are multiple attackers, staying glued to one limb can turn into a terrible idea. And on concrete, rolling for fancy Kimura transitions is a good way to smash your own head. Street grappling is about solving problems cleanly, not chasing highlight reel subs. Used correctly, though, the Kimura is one of the safest control tools you can have. You can hold someone without hurting them, or escalate only if you absolutely have to. It gives you leverage instead of relying on strength, and it works across all sizes. Smaller grapplers use it to tame bigger opponents all the time because leverage doesn't care about body weight. The biggest lesson with the Kimura is restraint. You're holding a joint that breaks fast. The goal isn't to feel powerful. The goal is to stay safe and in control. Turn it into a way to pin, redirect, move, or disengage, and it becomes one of the best grappling tools in real-world situations. Guillotine. The guillotine is one of the most common chokes in street fights, mostly because people give it to you. The moment someone charges forward with a sloppy tackle or ducks their head into your chest, their neck shows up right where you need it. Wrap the head, lock the grip, and suddenly the person who thought they were overpowering you is stuck in a choke they never saw coming. But here's the real truth. The guillotine isn't about squeezing as hard as possible, it's about positioning. If the choke is on the neck but your hips are out of place, you'll burn out your arms and they'll still breathe. When it's done correctly, you connect your forearm under the throat, clamp your elbows, drop your weight, and line your hips under their chest. That combination compresses the airway and the blood flow at the same time. They panic instantly, what makes the guillotine powerful and real. Life is that it forces decisions. A person stuck in it can't punch well, can't see clearly, and can't posture up. If they try to lift you, the choke tightens. If they roll, you can follow and finish from the top or bottom. It turns their forward aggression into their own trap, but it's also one of the easiest chokes to misuse. Lots of people fall to their back too early and hold the guillotine while the other person stacks them. On mats, that's just uncomfortable. On concrete, that's your spine and head eating pressure. The smarter approach is to stay standing whenever possible. Use the choke to force them upright, walk them backward, or buy yourself time to disengage. The guillotine also has different levels. A sloppy headlock guillotine mostly hurts. A properly locked high elbow guillotine can shut the lights off quickly, and when the choke seals fully, you don't feel like you're being crushed. It just goes dark fast. That's why control is so important. i.e., few seconds too long and you're crossing a line you don't want to cross unless it's truly life or death. There's another subtle thing the guillotine does well. It punishes bad tackles. Street fighters love to rush with their heads down. Once they've been choked hard for doing it, they stop trying. That's behavior correction in the simplest form. Still, it isn't perfect. Against multiple attackers, locking yourself into a choke can leave you blind to someone else approaching. Against knives or hidden weapons, tying both arms up around someone's neck can become dangerous. As always, awareness beats ego. Sometimes the best use of a guillotine is to snap them upright, create space, and leave. Used with discipline, the guillotine is one of the most efficient self-defense tools in grappling. It punishes reckless aggression, gives you instant control, and can finish if it truly needs to. But just like everything else in Jiu-Jitsu, it's only as smart as the person using it. Stand up and leave. There's one move in Jiu-Jitsu that beats every choke, every submission, and every dominant position. It doesn't look impressive in a highlight reel, and nobody brags about it after training. But in real life, it's the one thing that keeps you safe more than anything else. It's knowing when to stand up and leave. Most street fights don't start because someone wants to kill you. They start because someone wants to prove something, save their ego, or impress their friends. If you stay in that game, you play by their rules. Jiu-Jitsu gives you a different option. control, stabilize, and exit before things spiral into something ugly. Standing up isn't just physically leaving, it's mentally deciding you're done. Maybe you controlled someone in mount long enough for them to calm down. Maybe you tripped them and backed away. Maybe you took the back, held them, and realized hurting them wasn't necessary. As soon as you see a safe exit, that's the year win. Real fights aren't scored. There's no referee saying, keep going. There's only consequences afterward. The best self-defense practitioners don't try to dominate. They try to survive, stay out of court, and avoid injuries that change their life. You never know who has friends nearby, who has a weapon, or who is drunk enough not to feel pain. Walking away doesn't make you weak. It means you understand the difference between winning and getting home. The actual technique behind standing up matters too. In jiu-jitsu, we learn technical stand-ups so you don't turn your back, expose your head, or stumble when you try to leave. You create distance, post one hand, protect your face, and back away with your eyes forward. You're not running blindly, you're disengaging with awareness. Sometimes the hardest part of self-defense is ignoring pride. People yell, shove, and try to bait you into going further. A trained grappler doesn't chase. You decide when the encounter is over. And when you can control someone without hurting them, then leave the moment they are no longer a threat, that's real power. In the street, the best move isn't the flashiest submission. It's the choice to stay safe, avoid charges, avoid injuries, and walk away knowing you handled chaos with control. And that's the truth most people don't talk about. If you learned something from this breakdown, stick around. We make honest, realistic videos about what actually works. Not movie fantasy, not dojo myths. Hit subscribe, drop a comment about which move surprised you the most, and tell me what topic you want next. Train smart, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.